Today, we're talking about spirituality's shocking dark side and how you can protect yourself. This is important because we've been talking a lot about this recently. We talked about the zodiac recently, and there are a lot of spiritual traps, a lot of misinformation, a lot of bullshit, and a lot of scams going around because spirituality is on the rise. So the question is, how can you protect yourself from pseudo-spirituality? Hey, look, I live in LA, in Los Angeles, and I see this kind of stuff all over the place, all kinds of misinformation being peddled. So we're going to be talking about that, different ideas like light working and destroying your ego, and way more that have to do with things that you need to be careful with when embarking on trying to reach enlightenment or higher consciousness or whatever you want to call it, because it's getting to be kind of dangerous where New Age spirituality can really become a new kind of religion that ultimately impedes your progress and impedes your success. So that's what we are talking about today. And in doing so, I am going to be reading an excerpt from this article on Medium.com written by Kim Mirvang called Beware of Pseudo-Spirituality. Now, Kim Mirvang is a former Buddhist monk and meditator for 11 years. So it's going to be really cool to listen to what this individual has to say and talk about this coming from his perspective as an ex-Buddhist monk. And if you enjoy the excerpts that we're going to be reading today, go check out Kim Mirvang on Medium.com and give him a follow. He has some really good articles. So, like I said, we're going to be looking at some excerpts here, and this is important for what we're going to be talking about. Now, it starts off by saying, according to Google Trends, the global interest in spirituality has grown by 250% between 2007 and today. Now, that's crazy if you think about it. Just between 2007 and today, it's grown by 250%. And think about if you had a timeline that went even earlier, it would be insane. So this is really an explosion in popularity and global interest in spirituality. Now, the question is, why? Why is this happening? Why is there suddenly a global interest in spirituality? I've talked about this a lot on my channel, so I won't get into too much detail right now, but in a nutshell, a big reason why that there's this global interest in spirituality has a lot to do with the flow of information. As we are becoming more and more connected digitally, we're also becoming more and more connected spiritually. As every single one of us becomes connected through our smartphones and our access to social media and things like Instagram and TikTok and YouTube, where we can instantly connect with each other and see what everyone's doing all across the world almost instantly, we're getting a greater and greater form of connection. In addition to things like that and psychedelics becoming more available and just so many different factors, this is increasing in humanity's understanding that we are connected and that there's something more going on. Now, once again, because I mentioned psychedelics don't do anything dangerous or illegal or feel pressured, they're definitely not necessary. So just to continue here, the individual here, Kim, says that spirituality is becoming mainstream, not least because recent scientific developments are making physicalist views less and less tenable. And also, I'd like to point that as well. That's another good point. But unfortunately, most people aren't aware of this. And this is something I try and bring and highlight the importance of on my channel. I was actually going to talk about this today, but I decided to talk about this instead. So we might talk about this next week. But this is how many scientific ideas today, such as quantum mechanics, are showing that reality can't be physical. It can't. Things like superposition, things like wave-particle duality, and things like especially quantum entanglement are showing that reality can't be physical. Now, unfortunately, most people don't know about this. So many people don't even know what quantum mechanics is, despite quantum mechanics being founded in the early 1900s. Most people have a model of reality that's over a century years old. Most people look at reality and see reality being made of atoms. Think of atoms being little hard bits of matter that kind of whiz around and clump together to create higher and higher molecular structures and then bodies. No, that idea is over 100 years old, but most people go around thinking that. So modern science shows us that that is not how matter behaves, that in fact matter, as classically defined, does not exist. The founder of quantum mechanics, Max Planck, says, as a man devoted his whole life to the study of atoms, I can tell you this about matter. There is no such thing as matter. that reality is ultimately mind. So, but that's another good point. And then he says another reason why is that many people hold that the world has gone to shit. And as we know, it's when life starts shit hitting the fan that we start asking for the meaning of life. Now, I do agree with that, except that shit's always been hitting the fan. I mean, if you look at the history of humanity, it's always been shit and fan shit all over. Just covered with feces all over. So I don't think it's necessarily that. I think it's that coupled with our digital connectivity, which allows us to view it in real time. For example, when some atrocity is occurring, we don't have to wait a week for us to get a newspaper that all it has is some grainy black and white photo of something in an article written by someone who's biased. Now we're able to log on to social media and see it instantly, almost instantly, what's happening via people taking live feeds of what's happening or videos of what's happening. So I don't think it's necessarily that things are getting worse, so to speak, even though things are getting pretty bad. It's that we are now able to comprehend it on a large, almost instantaneous scale across the world. And the reason why this starts to contribute to building a higher consciousness is because it's developing what's known as an analog all, or at least what I call the analog all. So what the analog I is a model of you as an individual. So for example, when you think about what you're going to go do next week, you think, oh, next week I'm going to go shopping at the grocery store and get some potatoes. Well, in your mind, you can imagine yourself going to the grocery store, getting potatoes. You have a visual representation or an internal, it doesn't have to be visual. Some people don't have visuals. It can be just an internal model of what you are. Well, that's your analog I. And this is part of what allows you to become self-aware in addition to your ego. Well, the analog all is a model of all reality as a whole. And reality is a interconnected whole. And social media facilitates that. So it's like looking into a mirror and going, oh, I'm an individual. Social media allows us to look into the mirror of the collective. There's more to it than that, but I want to condense this down. So what's the problem here? What is the issue? The issue is that since spirituality is becoming mainstream, you're going to have a lot of people bullshitting you. And not even intentionally, they could just be getting it wrong. But there are a lot of people who bullshit you intentionally. And that's why I always say, hey, when I talk about the stuff that I talk about on my channel, don't listen to what I have to say just because I'm saying it. Think for yourself. Be skeptical. Weigh it with logic and reason. I always tell people you should absolutely, if you want to know truth, you should take a Philosophy 101 course, and it's real easy. You can find a playlist online on YouTube. It'll take you just a week to complete. If you do 45 minutes a day, you can probably complete it in a week or a week and a half. Super easy, super simple. Why? Because it will teach you how to think rationally and logically and critically. And that doesn't mean in a boring sense. That doesn't mean you're going to go be a atheistic materialist and think that. No, that just means that you're able to separate truth from falsity. People don't realize that the ability to think rationally and separate truth from falsity is, people think it's something that they're just born with innately. It's something that you can get better at and practice and build at it, just like you build muscles. You're not going to be able to go out and lift 200 pounds right away. Well, just like you're not going to be able to go out and be able to understand what's true and false right away. Let's say you have a scientist, physicist, a Buddhist monk, a New Age spiritualist, and I don't know, a philosopher, all telling you different things about reality and each giving really good convincing arguments about reality. How are you going to tell who's telling the truth? They're both going to sound really convincing. Well, you have to exercise your ability to know how to think critically, rationally, and logically. Truly, to be able to separate truth from falsity. So it's important to do that. So you have a lot of these spiritual gurus and whatnot coming together, trying to sell you on things, or just trying to get you to believe what they're saying. How do you know if what they believe is telling you the truth, or if it's blocking your spirituality? I just did a video on the zodiac that you should watch called "Is the Zodiac Actually Demons? Are the zodiac signs actually demons?" Go watch it. Go check it out. because it talks about how things like zodiac and astrology is true in a certain sense, but not in the way that it's taught in the mainstream. We talk about it in terms of how Carl Jung viewed the zodiac as being an archetypal system that represents structures in the psyche and the unconscious, not actual planets and stars. The planets and stars just represent structures in your mind, just like gods and goddesses and angels and demons aren't actually gods and goddesses, angels and demons. They represent aspects of your unconscious. Same thing with that. So there's a lot of ideas that get skewed and misinterpreted and that can actually block your enlightenment. Why do they block your enlightenment? Well, because if you're busy worshiping a god, then you're not going to be transforming yourself. If you're busy blaming your problems on Mercury retrograde rather than taking responsibility for your own actions, then you're not going to be growing as a person. All these different ideas. So we have a lot of different ideas that can block you. Certain things like light working. There's nothing wrong with being a light worker, but if you have those people who tell you, well, you should just always have positive thoughts, positive vibes only. Guess what? Positive thoughts, positive vibes only is going to lead to shadow repression. And when you repress all the negative builds up and builds up and builds up, and it becomes in the background, unbeknownst to you, that controls your life. A good way to see this is if you ever get a real nasty comment on social media, someone just being a total asshole. Sometimes if you click on their profile, what will it say? It'll say like, oh, love and light, good vibes only. That's because these people are so repressive of their shadow side that it comes out in bursts. They have no idea how to integrate it. They have no idea how to control it. They have no idea how to work with their dark side because they've ignored it and repressed it. So that's one example. If you want to be a light worker, that's fine, but make sure that you're also a shadow worker as well. We're both beings of light and dark. And that's one important aspect. Another, and I'm just throwing out some examples here. Another important aspect is the example of the ego. There's a lot of people that tell you that you should destroy your ego. You need to get rid of your ego. No, your ego is your center of your field of consciousness. It's what allows you to be self-aware. It's what allows you to be conscious. If you were to destroy your ego, you'd become like an animal. An ego is your sense of I. But you don't want to identify with your ego. So you can think of the ego as being the mental analog of your body. What is your body or your avatar? Your body, your avatar, is what allows you as an eternal mind or a soul or whatever you want to call it to interact in the physical world. If you didn't have a body, you couldn't interact in the physical world. You have a physical body and allows you to interact in a physical world. Your ego is what allows you to interact in culture and society. Your ego allows you to interact in culture and society. Why? If you didn't have an ego, you'd be like an animal. You wouldn't be able to have conversations. You wouldn't be able to make decisions. You wouldn't be able to behave in a way that allows you to act like a person in social settings. You'd behave like an animal. You wouldn't be doing critical thinking. You'd just be behaving on instinct. So the ego is not something you want to destroy. However, you don't want to identify with it. Just like your body is not something you want to destroy, but you don't want to identify with it. You are more than it. Just like you're more than your body, you're more than your ego. So you don't want to destroy the ego, but you don't want to identify with the ego either. You want to recognize it for what it is. That is an important tool. Same thing with your body. You don't want to destroy it. You want to recognize what it is. That is an important tool. So you want to keep it healthy and well developed, just like you want to keep your ego healthy and well developed. That doesn't mean you can't bypass your ego from time to time. Of course you can. You can bypass your body from time to time when you go to sleep and dream and have lucid dreaming or have meditative states. But you don't want to destroy it. You want to keep your body healthy. Same thing with the ego. You don't want to destroy it, but you want to keep it healthy. But it's fine to bypass it from time to time, and it's fine, and you should not identify with it. These are just some examples. But the author here continues, says that for the vast majority, they're left in echo chambers full of seekers that feed on the spiritual sounding crumbs distributed by anyone willing to make people feel warm and fuzzy. That's the element here. You have a lot of spiritual new agers, a lot of gurus, a lot of mystics that are just trying to make you feel good, feel warm and fuzzy. Oh, positive vibes only. Always look on the bright side of life. And it continues by saying these seekers get lost looking for spiritual superpowers, the promise of omniscience, ascension to the 5D, and downloading the new earth in the name of God's alter ego, the universe. And you see, it becomes a very religious type of thing where now you're looking for guidance from the universe rather than having faith in God. It's just religion. It's become religion again. Instead of having faith in God, you're looking for guidance for the universe. And ideas like creating a new earth aren't bullshit. It's true. We want to create a new earth. The fact that the universe is powerful is not bullshit, but we are the universe. So do you see the difference? Is that it's in the right ballpark, but there's very, very important differences. The universe is not something that's watching out for you like God watches out for you. The universe is what we are. And so we have that power within ourselves to direct our own lives. That's what it means to be a world shaper. That's what it means to be divine. That's what it means to be God. That's what it means to have this power, is for you to be the shaper of your life and for us to be the creators of our destiny. As long as we're looking for some external thing like, oh, the universe, or oh, the stars, then you're not in control of your life anymore and you're giving your life away. And it's no better than being religious. If you're giving your life away to a God in the sky, it's just as bad as giving your life away to the universe and the stars. You need to be able to be shaping your life according to your will and your power. So, and I like what this individual says, right? This is I like this guy. I haven't read a lot of his articles, okay, so I can't vouch for everything. I have no idea, but so far I like what this guy says, and very cool that he's an ex-former Buddhist monk. Very, very interesting. He says that some people have such a broad concept of spirituality that mindset work, stretching, drinking smoothies, and even playing chess can become spiritual. And yeah, that is the thing. Then, like I said, I live in LA, so I see this all the time. People think that they're super, super spiritual because they go drink smoothies and stretch and do yoga and I don't know, go to Burning Man and smoke weed or something and suddenly think that they're super spiritual because of that. When no, that's not spirituality. You can incorporate those things into your spirituality, and I like what this individual says. This says there's a good reason why everything starts to feel spiritual. Because in truth, reality is spiritual. There is no physical world. This is already the spiritual realm. And that's exactly true. That's why these certain practices can be incorporated into your quote-unquote spirituality. I don't even like using the word spirituality, but we're talking about it in that context today. It can be incorporated into it, but it isn't in itself necessarily that. And the individual continues by saying, spirituality is about the theory and practice that leads to spiritual enlightenment. It's a very specific discipline that promises freedom from suffering. Obviously, superfood smoothies won't deliver on that promise. And this is a really good point. Now, my view is not necessarily that spiritual discipline promises freedom from suffering. It can. But that's not like the main thing. It's almost when one becomes enlightened, one realizes how to transmute suffering into transformation, just like a caterpillar that, you could see the caterpillar trying to bust out of the cocoon as something that's suffering. But if one is enlightened and uses it as a transformative power, you realize that is what leads you to become a butterfly. So it's not necessarily, I wouldn't, it's not I'm not in line with really that Buddhist concept, but there is some of that there. We also want to reduce suffering in the world, absolutely. But there is a lot more to it than just that. But spirituality is about the theory and practice that leads to spiritual enlightenment, and we can understand this as those practices that lead us to a higher consciousness. Now, is stretching and drinking smoothies, are they going to lead you to spiritual enlightenment? No, they're not. Spiritual enlightenment is something very, very difficult, and I talk about a lot on my channel on how you need 3 primary aspects, which is metacognition, concept networking, and phenomenological experience. I'm not going to get into all that today because that takes a really long time to explain. But in a nutshell, put it simply, is by questioning your beliefs and going beyond your limitations, going to the places that make you uncomfortable. What I mean by make you uncomfortable is questioning those things you don't understand, exploring what you don't understand. And most people don't do that. People who are Christians, they don't like exploring the inconsistencies in the Bible, for example. Those who are scientific materialists don't like to critique the empirical / scientific method. Those who are spiritual don't like to critique their rational basis for 5D cosmic ascension or whatever. People like to remain in what is comfortable and affirms their belief, not what is uncomfortable and threatens your belief. And what I'm saying is you should go where you're uncomfortable and go where what threatens your beliefs. Now, I'm not talking about anything physical. Always be safe. All right? I'm being metaphorical for talking about physical ideas. Being aware of your limitations and going beyond them is what will allow you to reach a higher consciousness. Does drinking smoothies and stretching allow you to do that? No. Now, can drinking smoothies and stretching be implemented into a practice of one who is more conscious? Yes, it can. So, for example, if you're a highly conscious individual and you realize that keeping your avatar healthy is important, then you can help keep your avatar healthy and important by drinking smoothies and stretching. But drinking smoothies and stretching is not going to lead you to enlightenment. It is one that an enlightened person may choose to do in their path of living a healthy life, if that's what they want to do. So you see, it's very, very important, but it's different, than saying that these things are going to help you. And he puts a list of things that won't lead you to enlightenment. And he lists avocado toast and stretching and levitation and remote viewing and telepathy and the law of attraction and loving others and warm and fuzzy feelings and hope and inner peace and morality and compassion and fucking your soulmate and profound sounding stoner thoughts and beauty. I like this guy. I like what he's writing. Now, I want to comment on some of these things because there's going to be a misconception. People are going to say, well, wait, but isn't compassion really important for being spiritually enlightened? Compassion is incredibly important. And psychology and mindset work is incredibly important. And a lot of these things, not all these things, some of these things are bullshit, but a lot of these things are important, but they're not things that are going to directly lead you to higher consciousness. For example, let's take compassion, for example. Compassion is incredibly important. We need way more compassion in this world. But you can imagine someone who's super compassionate, incredibly compassionate person, but maybe they're dumb as a bag of bricks. And no offense, but I'm just using this to illustrate my point. You could have someone that's very stupid, but incredibly compassionate. And it doesn't matter how compassionate they are, they're not going to reach a higher level of consciousness. It's not something that directly leads to, it's when one becomes more conscious, they realize the importance of compassion and begin to cultivate compassion in their life. Compassion is a consequence of higher consciousness. It's not necessarily something that will lead to higher consciousness. Same thing like, fucking your soulmate is a really good example too, because you're going to have a lot of these people that are talking about like soulmates and twin flames that are, guess what? They're trying to get you to buy their like romance course or something like that. There's all these weird ideas that can conflated with spirituality and higher consciousness that don't have anything to do with spirit. They can be consequences of it, but not actually what lead to it. And so there are some of these things that I don't entirely agree with, though. For example, the perfection of character. The perfection of character can lead to higher consciousness if done correctly. And same thing with psychology and mindset work. Let's take psychology and mindset work as an example. Now, psychology and mindset work depends what kind of psychology and mindset work you're talking about. For example, you could have someone that's a psychologist, a therapist, that's not enlightened at all. Because, however, if you do certain types of psychology and mindset work, such as inner star actualization, where you are specifically incorporating the elements of yourself that will allow for a higher consciousness to develop, for example, the mirror self, which is your inner opposite. Your mirror self, if you start integrating your mirror self, that could potentially lead to concept networking. So concept networking is an element necessary for reaching higher consciousness. What is concept networking? That is seeing a bunch of apparent disparate subjects and seeing how they connect together to form a unified whole. For example, if you're able to look at psychology, physics, mathematics, philosophy, the occult, history, love, sex, like basically just pick a list of topics. They seem different and disconnected. Like, what does physics and the occult have to do with anything? Usually they would seem opposite of each other, right? Well, if you take a look at all these subjects and begin to see how they actually connect and are just talking about different aspects of a unitary reality, just seeing things from a different side of view. A good example is the blind man and the elephant. Blind man and the elephant is a good example of concept networking. And let me actually write that down. Blind man and elephant, good example for concept networking. So the story of the blind man and the elephant is basically imagine a group of blind men, and they have no idea what an elephant is, and there's an elephant in front of them, and they're going to go try and figure out what this elephant is. So to figure out what this elephant is, they have to touch it. And so one of them touches the trunk of the elephant and goes, "Oh, an elephant's like a snake." And another touches one of the legs and goes, "No, the elephant's not like a snake. It's like a tree." And another one touches the tail and goes, "No, elephant's not like a tail, or elephant's not like a tree. It's like a rope." And another one touches the ear and goes, "No, it's not like a rope. It's like a blanket," or whatever. Well, each one is right, but they're not seeing the big picture. And to each of them, they're going to be like, these are completely different things that have nothing to do with each other. But if you're able to see they all connect together when you see the whole picture, that's like seeing the connection between apparently disparate subjects. So psychology can help with that if you're doing inner star actualization, for example, which entails integrating the mirror self, which entails exploring your inner opposite, which means exploring the subjects that you are not normally apt to explore. For example, if you're an artist, you should explore logic and mathematics and reason and philosophy. If you're a philosopher, mathematics and whatever, you should explore art. If you're a very emotional person, you should you should learn how to think rationally. If you're a very rational person, you should learn to explore your intuition and your emotions. This is because we need to be a full, well-rounded individual to truly begin to engage in concept networking and see how things interact and connect with each other, and explore subjects that we normally wouldn't explore. So some of the elements that this individual lists, I disagree and say they can lead to a higher consciousness depending on how they are used. But I do agree that sometimes they don't. So like I said, you can have someone who's a world-renowned psychologist who's an absolute idiot in terms of higher consciousness, who's not conscious, hardly conscious at all, is merely self-aware. And so real quick, I want to just read a couple more quotes. The individual points out that the things listed have one or more things in common. That they make you feel that your life is affirmed and it feels rewarding, or they make you feel warm and fuzzy, or it makes you feel healthy or smart, or they're helpful. And the individual says, again, all these things are nice, but that doesn't make them spiritual. But they can. Some of them can be. Some of them aren't at all. Some of them are bullshit, like some of the stuff he listed. But he's right in saying a lot of the things that that has been listed aren't going to lead you to a higher consciousness. But they are nice. And once you are in a state of higher consciousness, yeah, it's great to be able to be healthy and do a lot of these things that were said. But specifically psychology and mindset work and inner work, my position is these very much can and are critical for leading to you do higher consciousness if done correctly. But he's right when he talks about like avocado toast and stretching and, fucking your soulmate and stuff like that. In that, I absolutely agree. And he says, the problem is that spirituality at its core is about liberation. It's about freedom. And that sounds that he also says that it's about liberation from suffering. And while I don't necessarily disagree with that, I don't. I would not phrase it that way. Becoming higher conscious is extremely difficult, and it's true that you don't have to suffer. You can but struggle will always be there. Now, struggle is a little different. You can think of the difference between suffering and struggle like this. Suffering would be like, I don't know, imagine someone being tortured. That's suffering. Struggle is like what I had mentioned earlier with the caterpillar struggling to break free from its cocoon. If it's directed and understood properly, it can lead to your growth. Whereas just suffering is just, yeah, that's, so if, as long as it's understood that way, then I agree. But I just want to be clear about that because it can be misunderstood. So anyone trying to tell you that reaching a higher state of consciousness is easy is lying. It's not easy. It's difficult, but it's so well worth it. It's so well worth it. And it's going to take a lot of time and a lot of practice and all these things that people try and, it's being very, very misrepresented today. And the reason why we have to be careful, here's the reason why this is critical here, is that you can see that old religion is dying. Good. Great. Yay. Hooray. Let's throw out party poppers and fruit baskets. Yay. I'm very happy about this. However, New Age spirituality is rising. So is that a good thing or a bad thing? Well, it's better than religion. But guess what? New Age spirituality is going to be used to control and coerce and subjugate the population. And it's just going to become a new religion unless people begin to realize what higher consciousness truly is. And this is why, I talk about what I talk about on my channel. I'm very vocal about things that aren't popular. Like, for example, when I talked about the zodiac, I'm going to tell you, hey, this can be limiting to you in your life. If you understand them as archetypes of the mind, that's fine. That's cool. Go crazy with zodiac symbols. They can be really interesting. Just like working with angels and demons can be interesting, as long as you understand that they're aspects of your mind, not actual things out there that are going to control your life. That's what's important. So it's very important, because what are the main things that block your spirituality? Or not spirituality, but what are the main things that keep humanity in bondage? Mainstream religion, scientific materialism, and capitalism, consumerism. Mainstream religion, because it tells you that you aren't divine, you have to worship a god, that you're dirty and sinful and flawed. Scientific materialism, because it tells you that reality is material, you're just a random accident. When you die, you're nothing more than dirt. And then capitalism and consumerism, because it turns you into nothing more than a product and a number. It values your worth based on how much money you make, or how much work you can do, or how much products you consume. So mainstream religion is dying. That's great. Scientific materialism is on the way out, because it's being realized that reality must be more than that. That's great. And capitalism and consumerism is getting less and less popular as time goes by, but it's still a very big threat. But there's a lot of new things that are on the rise. For example, what might replace mainstream science could be panpsychism. Now, panpsychism is way better than materialism, but it still doesn't tell you that you are an eternal mind with infinite potential. It just says, oh, well, there's a mental element to matter. So that will still be restrictive. Same thing with mainstream religion. Mainstream religion is on the way out, but if it gets replaced by this new age mystical spirituality that has a lot of dangerous elements to it, which you're starting to, look to the universe for guidance and just consulting your horoscope and doing all this stuff that's like giving your power away, there's just going to be another way to control and manipulate you. You're going to have people controlling and manipulate you. Instead of praying to God for you, people are going to send good vibes to the universe to help you. Or, you know what I'm saying? We have to be beyond space and time, and you have to break from the narrative that's going to be perpetuated in your time right now. So this information that I put out, these videos that I put out, these audio things that I put out, this is for those who aren't following the trends. This information has been there for people to find throughout time, to step outside of the bounds of a manufactured society and a manufactured consciousness, to be free right here and right now for yourself and for others, to create a new life for you and to create a new life for all of us here today. So, as always, if you like my work, if you like what I talk about, please like and subscribe so we can spread this information, and consider supporting on Patreon so that I can continue to create. And you can get access to our secret weekly live streams and secret videos. You can also help out by hitting the join button right below this video on YouTube. I want to give a big shout out to everyone who does support on Patreon, because once again, Patreon is the best way to support my work. Shout out to Philanthropist, Zach, Renaissance Fairy, Cassidy, Michael, Angela, Maria, Top of the World, Ethan, Joel, It's Vashita, and everyone else. Thank you very much.